Thank you for watching True Crime Time. All right, everybody, so we have gotten an update recently on the Stephen Smith case, and I really think it actually creates more questions than gives us answers. It's been reported that there are two persons of interest being sought out in this case, but the interesting thing is these two people were named really early on in the investigation, so right off the bat we have to wonder why it's taken so long to look into them. So the two persons of interest are Patrick Wilson and Sean Connolly. Now, they haven't been connected to Buster in any way, but I'll show you how they are actually connected to the Murdaugh family in quite a few different ways. So really quick, I'm going to recap kind of what's going on with Patrick Wilson and Sean Connolly and how they're connected here, but I've also put together a flowchart for you. So to recap, on December 15th of 2015, the South Carolina Highway Patrol received a tip from a man named Daryl Williams, who said his stepson Patrick Wilson had told him that Sean Connolly struck and killed Stephen Smith. At the time, Patrick Wilson was being represented by attorney Corey Fleming, who was Alex Murdaugh's best friend, for attempted murder charges. Those charges were later dropped by the solicitor's office where Alec worked as a volunteer solicitor, and Randolph Murdaugh, Alex's father, worked as a part-time prosecutor. Daryl Williams stated that the reason he was passing the information on was because Randy Murdaugh had told him to call. On December 21st of 2015, Duncan interviewed Sergeant Nick Ginn of the Hampton Police Department about what Daryl Williams had told Ginn regarding Patrick Wilson. Apparently, Nick Ginn is Daryl Williams' stepson as well, in addition to Patrick Wilson. Now, that's what I've read, but I haven't been able to confirm that. So I kind of have that in the flowchart marked as a question mark on that connection. But it was in one report that Nick Ginn did have a connection to Daryl Williams, who was reporting this information about Patrick Wilson and Sean Connolly. So according to Ginn, Wilson had told Williams that Sean Connolly was drunk and had hit something that night. He said that Connolly came back the next day, saw the police, and then learned through the media that somebody had been killed. He said that Sean called Patrick crying and had told him what happened. So according to Sergeant Ginn, Patrick was crying as he told his stepfather the story, and he actually had walked outside and had threw up. They wondered if Patrick may have even been with Sean Connolly when it happened. So in this report, it says that Sergeant Ginn said that supposedly it was the mirror of the truck, and he had sent Nick the pictures of the truck he was driving that night. He says, "I want to say I sent everything to Mitch Altman of the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Him and my brother and me are good friends, and I didn't know who to contact. Mitch said he would get that information to the right person." But again, Sean Connolly has had 2 lawsuits now filed against him just in a short period of time after the murder happened. Meanwhile, let's talk about Patrick Wilson. Well, Patrick Wilson was actually charged with first-degree assault and battery and attempted murder on April 17th of 2015, with Patrick Wilson being charged with attempted murder. So according to the arrest warrants in that case, Wilson had gotten into an argument with a man and he fired a shot at the man's car that had 2 passengers inside. I guess this happened on Prince William Road in Brunson, South Carolina. And the people were afraid for their lives, the ones who were in the vehicle when he was shooting. Sean Connolly was with Patrick Wilson in the vehicle, and he gave a statement saying that when the shooting occurred, Connolly said Patrick Wilson grabbed his gun and he had actually shot at the sign after he argued with this guy. And then there's pictures where you can see this bullet hole in the sign. And so that kind of proves here that Patrick Wilson had discharged this firearm in this incident. This, I think it had something to do with maybe an ex-girlfriend of his or something, but I'm not quite sure all the details behind that case. But he got to the point where he was on the side of the road with somebody arguing, and he actually got a gun and fired it at a sign at a minimum on the side of the road. I don't know if he fired it at the vehicle or not, but that's a pretty serious incident in my opinion. And while Sean Connolly is having lawsuits filed against him by Randy Murdaugh, We have Corey Fleming, who again is Alex Murdaugh's best friend, representing Patrick Wilson in this attempted murder case. Now this case dragged out, and it wasn't until 2018, 3 years after the incident happened, that the case was dismissed in court. So in February of 2018, Wilson's indictment was nolle prost, which means the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office, where Alex Murdaugh worked as a part-time solicitor, decided to not prosecute, and the charges were dropped against Patrick Wilson for attempted murder. The person that Daryl Williams had reached out to report this information is South Carolina Highway Patrolman. He's part of an investigation team, and that's Michael Duncan. Now, he has made some statements. Recently, on News Nation, he did an interview that I thought was really good. I'm going to link that in the description below so you can check out that full interview with Michael Duncan. He's the one who is doing a lot of this investigation here that's in many of these reports. And he still kind of has the stance that he doesn't think it was a vehicle that caused the injury. He still kind of feels like it was something else, but he disagrees with the vehicle being the cause. He actually also confirmed that there was a rape kit ordered just 13 hours after Stephen Smith was found. And he's made statements that that's very unusual. That was the only time that he had ever seen that done. His team was on his way to the scene of the crime, and his team was actually called off and said that they didn't need to go to the scene once other people had arrived. He had done a lot of work on this case, but he never got the opportunity to really report or share his findings on the investigation, and he never got any updates, according to him, up until the time he retired in 2018. Now, Michael Duncan is also the person who interviewed Sergeant Nick Ginn. So Sergeant Nick Ginn, again, is reported to be also a stepson of Daryl Williams. I have it noted here with a question mark because I haven't confirmed it, but I have seen that written in different reports. So he's no longer Sergeant Ginn. He's now Councilman Nicholas Ginn, former Hampton Police Sergeant. So he had quite an extensive law enforcement career, but at this point he is now a councilman in the town or city that's just next to Hampton, South Carolina, where he was a sergeant. And then another interesting connection here to the Hampton Police Department and Sergeant Ginn, where there was a letter that was written by Stephen Smith's mom to the FBI where she mentions that she felt it was very suspicious that Officer Michael Bridges had arrived at the scene of her son's death just 1 minute after the 911 call had occurred. And then Jason Eubanks was the second person to arrive, and that was just 2 minutes after the 911 call had happened. And she felt like that short window of time didn't seem right, considering it was such a rural area where he was found. And then finally, we have South Carolina Highway Patrolman Mitch Altman, who at some point took possession of some sort of photo evidence of a vehicle that may have been involved in the death of Stephen Smith. So it's interesting to me that we kind of have this Murdaugh connection on the defensive side of Patrick Wilson, and then we have this Murdaugh connection on the offensive side of Sean Connolly. Randy Murdaugh had filed a lawsuit again against Sean Connolly, and now he's urging Daryl Williams to report this information that's incriminating against Sean Connolly. So this is a very interesting case, everybody. We have somebody reporting this information who has connections to the Murdaughs. The people who are being reported are connected to the Murdaughs on two different spectrums. We have a police sergeant who could potentially be connected to the person who's reporting this information, who would be connected to the officers who were arriving at the scene. There could be some blame happening between Patrick Wilson and Sean Connolly. I don't know if there's bad blood between the two of them, and maybe they're kind of using Sean Connolly as a scapegoat. We also have Patrick Wilson exhibiting a history of violent confrontations. We don't really have that on Sean Connolly. We do, though, have traffic violations on Sean Connolly, which would align with a truck striking Stephen Smith. So do we have a violent situation here, a violent confrontation against Stephen Smith, for example, with a bat with two people in a vehicle? Maybe Patrick Wilson was in the passenger seat or vice versa? Or do we have a situation where Sean Connolly was just driving and maybe struck Stephen Smith? We don't know yet, but more to come on those two people, hopefully, if these reports are true. Those names have been out there for quite a while. You also have to wonder, why didn't any of that get followed up on? We do see, though, where we had Michael Duncan, who had retired in 2018. We see Sergeant Jin being in a different position here. He's now a councilman working in a different job. So some of these people connected to the case aren't really working in that field anymore, so it could have gotten lost in the mix. We don't know, but very interesting. Again, let me know what you all think. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button. That helps more people have the opportunity to see the video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, because my next video will be coming out very soon and you don't want to miss it.